The blue planet is home to breathtaking landscapes, but some islands are true death traps hidden in plain sight. Nature has reclaimed these forgotten worlds, leaving behind a trail of abandoned ruins, poisonous lagoons, and haunting mysteries. This journey explores the most remote and inhospitable spots on Earth, from volcanic outposts to coral reefs that served as the backdrop for chilling tragedies. Discover why these places remain uninhabited and what happens when humanity tries to defy them. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments which city you are watching from. Here we go. Clipperton Island in France. Way out in the middle of the Eastern Pacific, about 1,100 kilometers southwest of Mexico, Clipperton Island is one of the most isolated territories on the entire planet. Although it belongs to France, no one lives there permanently, and only scientists or brave expeditions show up every once in a while. Clipperton is a small coral atoll, only 6 kilometers in size and shaped like a ring that surrounds an acidic and stagnant lagoon. There is no source of fresh water there, and the inner lagoon is impossible to drink because of the accumulated salt. The vegetation is very sparse, consisting basically of low shrubs, and the only permanent residents are seabirds and crabs. In the early 20th century, the place even tried to have people living there, when a small group of Mexican workers was sent to mine guano, which is basically bird droppings used as fertilizer. This operation began around 1906, with a group of soldiers and their families living under the Mexican flag. But the situation turned into a horror movie. In the following years, hunger, disease, and dehydration wiped out almost everyone. When a United States Navy ship arrived in 1917, only one man and a handful of women and children were still alive. After that, the island was abandoned for good. During the Second World War, the Americans even used the site as a weather station, but they took everything away after the war ended. Today, it is a French possession administered from afar by French Polynesia. The lagoon remains poisonous, and the lack of drinking water added to the intense heat makes it impossible to sustain human life for long. It is a forgotten outpost in the middle of the ocean, where time and nature have erased almost all traces of human presence. Basically, it is an island that offers a luxury menu consisting of acidic water, scorching sun, and lots of bird droppings. If you are looking for a place to be the next famous castaway, choose any other, because Clipperton is not playing around. Miyakejima in Japan. About 180 kilometers south of Tokyo lies Miyakejima, a volcanic island that is part of the Japanese Izu archipelago. From a distance, the place looks like the perfect setting for a natural yogurt commercial. It has lush forests, dramatic coastal cliffs, and small fishing ports surrounded by the deep blue of the Pacific Ocean. But this island keeps a very unpleasant little secret. It sits right on top of an active volcano that has decided to erupt repeatedly throughout history, releasing clouds of toxic gas so fatal that, at various times, the entire population had to flee so as not to become a statistic. The island is actually the exposed peak of a massive underwater volcano. The most recent eruption happened in the year 2000, when Mount Oyama, the island's central volcano, decided to explode after months of grumpiness. The eruption was not just a visual spectacle for satellite photos. It released immense amounts of sulfur dioxide, poisoning the air across the entire island. Trees withered, animals died, and the entire population of approximately 4,000 people was evacuated by the government in a hurry. For nearly 5 years, no one was allowed to live there. Scientists monitored the site from afar, measuring gas levels that frequently exceeded lethal concentrations. The soil itself was unstable, with openings and fissures that released toxic vapors all the time. The streets of the abandoned villages became ghostly scenes of half-empty houses, rusting vehicles, and docks being slowly reclaimed by the sea. During this time, nature began to take over everything. Wild plants and birds return, thriving in the absence of humans, even with volcanic gases continuing to rise. In 2005, after the air quality improved slightly, the government cautiously allowed residents to return, but with one very specific condition. Everyone on the island was required to carry a gas mask at all times in case sulfur dioxide levels took a sudden spike. Sirens were installed to warn of dangerous air conditions, and certain areas near the volcano were declared permanent no-go zones. Even today, although about 2,000 people have resettled in the safer parts, large sections remain deserted. The air here often carries a slight smell of sulfur, that delicious rotten egg odor, and yellow signs remind people to put on their masks if the wind changes direction. The roads near the crater are lined with gas detectors, and abandoned neighborhoods still remain frozen in time. They are silent monuments to the eruption that drove everyone out of there. Living in a place where the mandatory fashion accessory is a gas mask and the air smells like volcanic flatulence seems like the perfect plan for those who want to save on perfume and ensure that visitors never stay too long. Blanquilla Island in Venezuela. About 300 kilometers north of the coast of Venezuela lies Blanquilla Island, an uninhabited tropical paradise surrounded by the crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean. Although it looks like the perfect destination for a luxury resort, with its white coral beaches and turquoise lagoons, no one lives there. The island does not have a drop of fresh water, has no permanent structures or regular transport, remaining untouched except for the occasional visit from some lucky diver. It covers about 64 square kilometers and is part of the federal dependencies of Venezuela. The terrain is predominantly flat and dry, covered by shrub vegetation, cacti, mangroves, and several small salt lagoons in the interior. This lack of drinking water has always been the bucket of cold water that prevented any permanent settlements. Even the first explorers and fishermen who landed there could only stay for a short time, depending entirely on the food and water they carried in their boats. Archaeological evidence suggests that indigenous peoples may have visited the island long before European contact, possibly to fish or collect sea turtles, but no fixed community was ever established. During the 18th and 19th centuries, pirates and smugglers supposedly used the place as a hiding spot due to its remote location. Today, the island is a protected natural area, valued for its fauna and flora. The surrounding reef is full of turtles, barracudas, and colorful coral species, while the beaches serve as nesting grounds for seabirds. Because of its pristine condition, Blanquilla has become a focus of interest for conservation. Scientists see it as a living laboratory to study marine ecosystems, and the Venezuelan Navy occasionally patrols the island to prevent illegal fishing. To those looking from afar, it may seem like a paradise begging to be inhabited, but its dry climate and the absence of fresh water keep it completely wild. It is the perfect example of how the most beautiful places on Earth can be the hardest to tame. Basically, Blanquilla is that wonderful travel commercial that forgets to mention you will die of thirst in 2 hours. It is a paradise for pirates and turtles, but for humans, it is just a beautiful shop window where you can look, but you cannot touch, let alone live. Palmyra Atoll in the United States. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, approximately halfway between Hawaii and American Samoa, lies Palmyra Atoll, a remote ring of coral islands. Palmyra is a place of contradictions. A tropical paradise that looks like a haunted ruin, a biological marvel, and at the same time, a historical enigma. Its isolation has preserved the environment almost perfectly, but it has also given rise to one of the strangest and most unsettling reputations in the entire Pacific. The total land area is just over 12 square kilometers. There are no cities, permanent settlements, or airstrips in regular use. The nearest inhabited island is Kiribati, more than 2,000 kilometers away. For most of human history, Palmyra was simply too remote to matter and too difficult for anyone to stay. The first official record of the atoll was in 1798, when Captain Edmund Fanning, an American explorer, spotted it while sailing through the Pacific. 2 years later, it received the name of another American ship, the Palmyra, which nearly shipwrecked on its reefs. In 1862, the Kingdom of Hawaii formally claimed the site, later passing it to the United States when Hawaii became a United States territory in 1898. In 1940, the United States Navy built an airfield, a pier, and a radar station, transforming this silent atoll into a busy military outpost. The combination of war ruins, rusting vehicles, and dense jungle has long fueled ghost stories among sailors and pilots passing nearby. In 1974, The place was the scene of a real and deeply disturbing event that sealed its fame as a place of bad luck. That year, a couple named Malcolm Graham and Eleanor Muff Graham sailed to Palmyra as part of a community of yachties traveling the Pacific. Months later, they disappeared. When other sailors arrived, they found evidence of violence, and years later, the remains of Muff Graham were discovered buried in a metal box on one of the beaches. Another sailor, Dwayne Walker, was convicted of the murder, and the case became the subject of books and documentaries. Today, the island belongs to the Nature Conservancy Organization and the United States government, being a national wildlife refuge. Ecologically, the value is incalculable. The coral reefs here are among the most resilient in the Pacific, and the seabird populations are so dense that their droppings fertilize the soil, creating a self-sustaining ecosystem rarely seen elsewhere. The few visitors describe Palmyra as stunning, but disturbing. There is a feeling of being completely alone, beyond any help or witness. The silence is total, interrupted only by the waves and the cries of birds. In the end, Palmyra Atoll is as much a paradise as it is a warning. It shows the fragility of human presence where nature reigns supreme. War built it, abandonment preserved it, and now science protects it. But despite everything, the island remains what it always was. An inaccessible oasis in the middle of an indifferent ocean. Perhaps that is why it resists, reminding us that some corners of the earth should belong only to themselves. Palmyra is the kind of place that looks like it came out of a mystery series episode where everything is beautiful until you find a metal box buried in the sand. It is the perfect paradise for those who want to be alone, as long as you do not mind the fact that if something goes wrong, the nearest neighbor is 2,000 kilometers away and is probably a shark. Howland Island in the United States. In the Central Pacific, approximately halfway between Hawaii and Australia, lies Howland Island. It is a tiny strip of coral and sand that very few people have ever seen in person. At just 2.5 square kilometers, it is flat, dry, and punished by a relentless sun. Obviously, no one lives there. There is no fresh water, tall vegetation, or shade, only the sound of waves and seabirds. The place was first recorded by American whalers in the early 19th century and claimed by the United States under the Guano Islands Act of 1856, which allowed citizens to take possession of uninhabited islands rich in bird droppings to use as fertilizer. For a short period, the island was mined, but operations stopped as soon as the deposits were exhausted. In the early 20th century, it returned to silence. In the decade of the 1930s, the United States government established a small settlement there as part of a colonization project, an effort to secure territories in the Pacific for aviation and communication routes. A group of young men from Hawaii was sent to live on Howland and maintain a weather station and an airstrip. It was this airstrip, called Itasca Village, that was supposed to serve as the landing site for Amelia Earhart's famous flight around the world in 1937. On the second day of July of 1937, Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan took off from New Guinea heading for Howland Island, a flight of 4,100 kilometers over the open ocean. They never arrived, and despite exhaustive searches, neither the plane nor the remains were found. Although no one has lived on Howland for decades, the site is the target of occasional pilgrimage by historians and aviators. The remains of the old runway are still visible from above, being slowly overtaken by low vegetation. This island is a reminder of our own limits. It is a place where dreams literally disappeared into the sky, an empty speck of land that witnessed one of the greatest unresolved tragedies of the 20th century. Howland Island is basically a desert surrounded by water on all sides that became famous for being the place where no one could arrive. It is the hardest address to find in the world, and mind you, there is not even a building for the delivery person to get lost in. Which of these forbidden islands do you find the most unsettling? Could you survive in a place with no fresh water and a dark history? Tell us your city in the comments, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Stick around to check out the other videos on your screen and keep discovering the world's secrets. See you in the next one!